Season 6 is finally here, bringing new attachments, and existing attachments being able to be equipped to more weapons. This to me is a very big deal, because while we may have received 3 new weapons, some of these attachments, or should I say sights, completely change the feel of the weapon, and truly caters it to your needs and playstyle. It provides the player with so much variety to work with, and makes older weapons feel new and fresh again. In this video, we are going to see how each sight looks on their respective gun, and which attachment combination really stands out. Now, I did not get to the 1887 or Cerberus for 2 reasons. One, because I personally do not aim down sights with shotguns, as you already know, and the other reason is that they are low on the priority list compared to weapons that would see a significant difference in performance with those attachments. So before we get started, if you found this video informative, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but it means the world to me. Also subscribe for all things to finals, as well as the most comprehensive weapon guides in the game. One more thing, if you guys watched my last video, I'm sure you are well aware of the giveaway that I'm doing. However, I don't think it is quite enough, and Matthew from Embark has hooked us up with 5 Season 6 passes that I will also be giving away. So to be eligible for that, and to also let me know that you don't have a pass yet, all you need to do is write in the comments, Season 6 rocks. And if you want to enter to be one of the 5 to win $10 worth of VR bucks, simply just reply in the comments. And if you have nothing to say, just write in, haha, easy money, because that is exactly what it is. Anyhow, without further ado, let's jump into it. In Season 6, we've received 2 brand new sights. The Adder Reflex, which provides more zoom than both the red dot and the HCOG, but feels a little bit snappier. Notice how I said feels, because although visually it seems like the HCOG and red dot don't settle as fast when going into ADS, the start of the zoom on the other hand, the point at which the player presses the right click or the left trigger if you're on controller, all the way to where the zoom stops, are exactly the same when recording at 60 FPS. And if there was a difference, it would quite literally be 1 to 2 frames. The condensed zoom of the Adder Reflex really allows the player to hone in on a particular part of the target, whether it be the body or the head, making it really excel with precision, single shot, or burst type weapons. The next attachment is the Looking Glass. It essentially has the same amount of zoom as the Adder Reflex. However, the player is able to see more of the target. This will make it easier to maintain a target while tracking from close to medium range, without feeling disoriented if the target manages to move slightly off center. This sight is fantastic for assault rifles or any weapon requiring the player to maintain a consistent amount of damage on the target for a particular amount of time. I do have to say though, due to how the sight is, I found it more difficult to use than other sights when using weapons that have a harsh recoil, being that the reticle obstructs the view of the target or distracts from it. So now that we know more about the 2 new attachments, let's start with the light class, beginning with the ARN 220. I found the most success using the HCOG and red dot sight with this weapon because it made managing that harsh recoil a little bit easier. The slight zoom from both the Adder Reflex and the Looking Glass just enhanced the feel of the recoil for this weapon. But with that being said, the recoil is not that bad to begin with. You only really start to feel it if you're standing still firing. So in my opinion, the HCOG and the red dot are a little less jarring when using this weapon. However, if you prefer the other 2 sights, it is not going to make or break your performance. Next, we have the HCOG sight for the M11. Let's just say that this thing is a monster, especially with this attachment. I'll speak more about this later in the video. Next, we have the M26 Matter. Although this weapon is a shotgun, I do think that one of these sights may benefit it, being that the M26 Matter has a pellet cluster that is condensed enough to retain a good amount of damage from at least 10 meters. So aiming down sights, although it'll probably be for 1 to 2 shots, could be very beneficial when trying to close the gap. The HCOG sight as well as red dot sight are fantastic for that purpose. As for the Adder Reflex and the Looking Glass, these 2 sights fell out of place with the M26 Matter, being that the zoom on the Adder Reflex was a bit overkill, and the reticle for the Looking Glass, in my opinion, is a little bit too distracting and jarring when firing. But even with that, I'll be honest with you guys, I found myself aiming down sights very little with this weapon, because when I slow down my speed to aim down sights, it was always more than enough time for the enemy to completely obliterate me. This is made abundantly clear when you go against players using a minigun. Having the ability to sprint strafe and hip fire with this weapon is key to survival. Moving on to the classic XP54, using the HCOG and red dot sight with this weapon felt incredible. I personally prefer the HCOG a little more because it made me feel like I was firing the OG FCAR. However, the red dot sight is nothing to scoff at, and will completely obliterate your enemy just as good. If you're looking for something that will give you a little bit more zoom and will allow you to track better than the scope will, I highly recommend the looking glass, due to it providing you all the benefits of the scope without feeling tunnel visioned on your target. As for the adder reflex, the scope does feel good with this weapon. However, when going up against fast moving targets, I found it more difficult to maintain them versus using the other three sights. And this is strictly because of the zoom and small amount of area the scope covers. Next, we have the LH1. Even though this weapon has been nerfed, make no mistake, it is still a contender against some of Light's best weapons, especially with the addition of the HCOG, allowing the player a better view and more coverage of the target, which is better for tracking from close to mid-range. It doesn't necessarily outperform the red dot sight, but gives the player more variety to work with. In other words, it is all up to your preference. Now, the adder reflex and the looking glass performed very well with this weapon, especially on maps with more open spaces that encourage mid to far range engagements. However, from close to mid-range, these sights make the recoil feel much more intense, but proper pacing should be able to compensate for that. That's about it for the light class. Let's start with the medium and the new weapon, the CB01 repeater. The HCOG and the red dot sight provide the same amount of zoom, and both felt amazing. With that being said, the red dot sight performed a little bit better because of its ability to really let the player hone in on those headshots. The adder reflex also provides that same benefit, with that extra zoom allowing you to quickly micro adjust to acquire the head in order to snap fire. Both the red dot sight as well as the adder reflex are both insanely powerful for this weapon. Lastly, we have the looking glass, which does the same amount of zoom as the adder. However, with the scope being as wide as it is, it took me a little bit longer to separate the target from the environment when aiming down sights, thus causing me to take a little bit more time to line up my shot. On top of that, the bright green line going across the sight, aka the reticle, is quite distracting when the player is going for pinpoint precision. Up next, we have the AKM. The HCOG felt right at home with this weapon, and it's more of a choice of preference when it comes down to choosing between it and the red dot. However, if the player is looking for more zoom, the looking glass is a great choice. Although it does accentuate the recoil of the AKM, this is easily managed by simply moving dynamically and pulling down slightly. However, I cannot say the same about the adder reflex. This is because the small scope combined with the extra zoom makes it quite a jarring experience when trying to maintain and track a target within 15 meters. Moving on, we have the FCAR. As you all already know, they finally fixed the recoil bump it had at the beginning of the mag, making the already easy recoil turn into a laser beam. I'll be honest with you guys, just about every sight can work with this weapon. The adder reflex allowing you to zoom in and snap on to your opponent's head, then beam them out of existence. This is because unlike the AKM, the FCAR's recoil jump is slightly less intense, allowing you to easily track with precision through a smaller scope. And the red dot sight providing just as much precision, but with a little bit less zoom, allowing for easier tracking with absolutely zero visual recoil. If you're looking for more zoom with a wider sight to have an easier time maintaining a target, the looking glass is the perfect choice for maps that promote more mid to far range engagements. Let's just say the FCAR is finally back, baby. Next up, we have the FAMAS. Although this weapon did not receive any significant buffs this season, it indirectly did when it received the new sights. The HCOG feeling absolutely amazing on it, making it incredibly easy to acquire and micro adjust to maintain the target. The red dot sight providing the same benefits, but with a little bit more precision, and the looking glass giving you all the benefits of a scope, but again without the feeling of tunnel vision, and allowing the player to be more aware of their peripherals. But I saved the best for last, and that is the adder reflex. The zoom that this weapon provides against players between 10 to 30 meters is absolutely deadly, and is a sight I highly recommend trying at least once. So that wraps things up for a medium class. Let's see what Heavy's arsenal has to offer. Starting with the Shack 50. This weapon has a limited mag, meaning that in order for a player to be successful with it, maintaining the target is absolutely necessary. That is why the HCOG felt incredible on this weapon when compared to the visual clutter that the iron sights provided. On that note, the red dot sight felt right at home, giving the perfect balance of not too much zoom to track and maintain the target, but precision and more visual clarity. Now, as much as I wanted the adder reflex to work, it did make the first few shots easier to land. However, when it came to tracking a fast-moving target, it became a little bit more difficult because of the small sight and the area it covered. Now, the looking glass provides more coverage when it comes to the size of the sight, and if this weapon was very effective at ranges beyond 25 meters, this sight would be a great option. However, the Shack 50 is most optimal up to 15 meters, being that 15 meters is its damage drop-off minimum range and 25 meters is its maximum range. These two sights will essentially be utilizing a zoom that is effective at this weapon's damage drop-off ranges and will not aid in this weapon reaching its full potential. Now, if you feel comfortable using these sights, I'm sure you guys can make it work. This evaluation is again just my opinion. Next, we have the Lewis gun. The HCOG sight feels great on this weapon and is a suitable option for those that don't prefer the red dot. But because the Lewis gun provides the player with an easier recoil pattern on the start of the mag, being able to precisely maintain your headshots with minimal clutter is extremely important, making the red dot sight a little bit better in my opinion. The adder reflex can receive the same effect, but with just a little bit more zoom at the cost of more visual recoil. So I know before I said that the reflex is not as optimal for weapons that require maintaining DPS. It does enhance weapons though that require the player to land the first few bullets in the mag with precision, aka headshots, similar to the FCAR. On top of that, the Lewis gun is not working with a limited mag, so if the player loses sight of the target, they have time to micro adjust and reacquire that target. When it comes to the looking glass, I feel that the color of the reticle is distracting, making the recoil feel a lot more pronounced. Moving on to the M60. This weapon has received a healthy amount of buffs this season, transforming it into a meta contender. And even though the Lewis gun is meant for precision, I have to say this weapon will most likely give the Lewis gun a run for his money in that regard. Due to the size of its mag, this weapon provides a great deal of forgiveness and is absolutely nasty when you pair it with this sight. Because the M60 is not so much about precisely landing consistent headshots, but just requires the player to maintain the target in general, which both the red dot and HCOG can do with ease. As for the adder reflex and the looking glass, I feel that the zoom makes the recoil more pronounced and tracking the target a jarring experience. However, I can't stress to you guys enough, the HCOG and red dot sight feel incredible on the M60 at the moment. In terms of which one is better, I believe it is all up to preference when it comes to choosing between the two. That's about it for heavy, and now I want to go over the weapons and sight combinations that I think stood out the most. Starting with the M11. I'm trying to put my finger on it, but when using the HCOG, it really made the recoil for the M11 feel a lot more manageable when compared to the red dot. I think this is partly because of the circle that the HCOG provides around the red dot in the center, allowing the player to focus and center the target as a whole when compared to going into ADS with a red dot sight, making it easier to maintain centering on the target with the circle being a better point of reference. From 0 to 20 meters, there is very little that can go up against this weapon, and if you are using dash or cloak, closing this distance should be incredibly easy. The next is the HCOG and the red dot sight for the XP54. The visual clarity and zoom these weapons provide makes tracking with this weapon insanely easy. Combined with the buff to damage and straightforward recoil pattern, the XP54 can shred targets like butter from 0 to 25 meters, and if you land all your shots, the player could even stretch that to 30 meters, making this weapon incredibly powerful in Season 6. Next up, we have the FCAR. The addition of the red dot sight practically eliminated all visual recoil from this weapon, as well as the adder reflex providing it with a little bit more zoom, allowing the player to quickly snap and lock onto the head. And again, combined with the FCAR's easy recoil pattern, you will barely see a reticle bounce because of this. Up next, we have the FAMAS in combination with the adder reflex, allowing the player to quickly hyper-focus on the head of a target within 30 meters, then easily land back-to-back headshots with this sight, making it an incredibly easy task to eliminate two opponents with one mag. This sight and weapon combination is top tier, and I highly recommend giving it a try because of its ease of use. That is about it for this video. Please remember that this is still an initial review and first impression, so it may change later in the season when I have had more time to use each weapon and sight combination. Please let me know what sights you guys enjoy the most in the the comments. Also, if you found this video informative, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but it means the world to me. And subscribe for all things The Finals, as well as the most comprehensive weapon guides in the game. Also, I'll be announcing the giveaway winners on Sunday on a YouTube community post. So if you're watching this on TikTok, please go to my YouTube to check if you've won. Peace and love, guys, and remember, haha, easy money.